The first jury member of the Cannes Festival, yes. From Ukraine. Pride. Everyone says that Cannes is summer at its peak. I don't know, Cannes greeted me with rain, like, you know, proper rain. It all started with the transfer from the airport. It feels nice, you feel like an important person. They meet you there, take you somewhere, you look, wow, cool, beautiful. And how did they greet you? They gave a special kit. There was some kind of notebook. It's like a souvenir, you could say. But the most important thing there was, of course, the badge. It's a super badge. It says that you are the jury of your category. And with this badge, you can go anywhere, to all the lectures, to all the events. Apart from the events organized by the festival itself, there are numerous events organized by different cool partners. What impressed me the most was Spotify Beach. These guys just pulled off an incredible show. Every evening there was a huge concert, really cool, with A-list stars. For example, Foo Fighters. Since it's an open area, you could just stand on the promenade and watch this concert. And by the way, there's a very cool case from Spotify that we analyzed at Creative, so please follow the link and take a look. On the first day, we met where all the jury could get to know each other. I mean, all categories, the entire jury, the whole festival. This meeting impressed me quite pleasantly because I observed people from all over the world, of all races, all genders, of any age. Absolutely a really pleasant impression, yes, and this diversity, as it is, was present at the festival. They have been working on this for many years. And so I was, in fact, a witness to it. I think it's really important because later, when we're in the room, by the way, our room is the industry craft jury, it was also quite diverse. But, this really helps in coming up with interesting ideas and building a discussion, because people from different backgrounds can express interesting thoughts.
Simon Cook is the CEO of Cannes Lions.
And actually, it's a funny story, because when I arrived and saw him in person, he just came up to me and greeted me, asking something like, "Oh, have we met somewhere before?" in that manner. And I looked at him, didn't recognize him. To be honest, I said, "No, I don't think so." And then I felt embarrassed because it's not true. But the funny fact, actually, is that I physically resemble him. Strong enough? Strong enough. And constantly, when I was in the room judging, and somewhere there I went out, the organizers constantly caught up with me and shouted, Simon, Simon. And then, oh, sorry, I thought you were Simon. And it happened several times. So that's a funny fact. Yes, and now I understand the essence of his question. Jokes aside, but I could use it somehow. For example, I could go into the neighboring room where the design jury sits, pretending to be Simon. Maybe give them some instruction, I don't know, and then look at the exhibition or something. What I just wanted to say, right? About the first meeting with all the juries. Announcer. Then Simon came, he said, "Dear friends, why do you think we have gathered you here?" Yes, and there were a few reasons. One of the reasons, of course, was for you to get to know each other a bit, right? To get used to each other a little, for networking, so to speak. Yes, but the main reason, he says, is that you see this wonderful sunset. The next few days you will not see the sun at all, because the rooms where the judging process takes place have no windows, artificial lighting. This judging occurs on the negative first floor in the palace, the main palace, where all the ceremonies later take place in the evening. And these are just office spaces, large rooms, especially for the design and craft category. Right. They are large because there is also an exhibition of works, meaning physical samples. There's a large table there, so to speak. Of course, there's a screen where all these discussions take place, and nearby are stands where you can look at the works, where you can physically touch and examine them if needed, because it's about craft after all, about execution, which is important. I have seen cases, there were indeed cases, and I have experienced it too, yes, when you change your attitude toward work after seeing how it is physically made. An interesting point about safety, on the very first day, well, actually, in the first 5 minutes after we went through the entire judging room, we were asked to hand in our phones. There's a separate stand with bags labeled with, well, our names. By the way, I also thought that shorts were selected by a separate jury. So last year I was already a member of the shortlist jury, right? But this year, the jury of the main jury that decides on the medals, it also selects shorts. So you go through the entire process from start, yes, to finish. So, therefore, but yes, we did this in advance, remotely, around 1,000 applications in our category. This is not projects, these are applications. So each project can be submitted in several subcategories. So, from these nearly 1,000 submissions, we reduced them to 134. And when we physically arrived in Cannes, yes, we entered the room with 134 submissions. We were asked on the very first day to shorten this long list and turn it into a short list. And there, according to the rules, well, approximately up to 10%, so to speak, has to be accordingly works, right? We had to shorten it to, well, approximately to 90, at least, applications from 130. So yes, to eliminate about 40 applications. So how did it happen? We had this list, and we discussed each application separately in turn. Everyone expressed their opinion on whether it should be kept on the short list or not. And so we went through all 134. It is indeed work, and it is very responsible, actually depending a lot on the team, yes, on how difficult it is to carry out. Because, well, truly, yes, it depends on the people, how your discussion will unfold, in what mode, because it can be completely different, specifically in our category and with this group this year. I believe we were very lucky. We had very open-minded people who listened and treated others' opinions with great respect. That is Alexander Kremenko. They listened to everyone, no one interrupted anyone, and what I consider a sign of such emotional intelligence, people were able to change their opinions. So even if there were some disagreements, we reached some specific position, and people who initially said one thing would then change their minds and talk about it. They would say, "Oh, thank you, friends, you convinced me." Yes, it was already another day. This was already maximum responsibility, of course, because it was about metals, and this is a very limited history. After all, if on average, according to statistics, about 7% of works get shortlisted in all categories, metals receive about 2%, 2 to 3%. So that's very little. The responsibility is just off the charts. Well, come on. You then give someone gold, and it has to be as objective as possible, right? Then everyone will be watching, everyone will be discussing it, and so on. No, this is a serious matter. And of course, the level of discussion was already different. The discussion was generally longer. We returned to discussing even the works that had already been discussed, and so on. So it's a very time-consuming process. Based on my experience as a jury member at various festivals, I thought that in Cannes, At least there would be a highly formalized system with established formats and templates to follow, but no. This really depends on the president of the jury. How, like the methodology or how we will consider, distribute, for example, metals and so on, depends on them. And accordingly, this can vary. Picture or no picture, the approach can differ even within 1 year across different categories, different jury presidents. They can act, propose, decide on these awards in completely different ways. It's interesting. It is worth mentioning that these Cannes were actually the anniversary Cannes, 70 years of the festival. Accordingly, they held an interesting exhibition with posters signed by all the jury. And then these posters participated in the exhibition. And I wrote there, "Glory to Ukraine." Yes, I saw that they print magazines with all the winners on the next day after the ceremonies. That is, it happens as quickly as possible. They print this magazine overnight. Because why quickly? Because I myself was a juror, and I understand that we just made a certain decision. We just allocated these awards. The ceremony is already taking place according to our decision. And the next morning, I see the magazine with everything printed in it. This speed impressed me. Well, and in principle, the magazine, the paper is something a bit, it's kind of old school, but there's some charm in it, something pleasant. I don't know. I liked it. And of course, it's nice to find your work there, if it's there. So many other important matters that there is actually not enough time for this, unfortunately, including various networking. Well, of course, there were a lot of people from our network, and I had to talk to everyone, communicate after the ceremony, and meet before these lectures, before these, the ceremony, before these, all sorts of different lectures. Well, before that, the jury work. Well, in reality, there really wasn't time for this. That's why this heat and proximity to a very beautiful sea, Lev Gotalsky, it just irritated a little more quickly than anything else. Well, it is impossible to leave Ukraine and suddenly forget that there is a war. That's what I would say. So actually, you don't feel much of a lift or great happiness here, yes. And that's why there wasn't really a reason to stay at those parties, because there was no mood. I hope that next year, I really want to believe that the war will end and we can then focus on some industrial stories. I really enjoyed the lecture by Marcel, CMO of AB InBev, who talked about the connection between the success of their business and business results, and linked it with their success in Cannes, as they have been the #1 marketing team for the 2nd year in a row. It's truly impressive. Just about 5 or 6 years ago, they were number 42, if I'm not mistaken, and now for 2 years in a row, they are #1. And this wonderful chart absolutely correlates with the company's business growth chart. That's what's great. And when the client talks about it, when the client emphasizes how important creativity is now, how it drives their business, well, it sounds very convincing. On one hand, the ceremony is very emotional, of course. And all these speeches, performances, photos, photo sessions on stage, yes, all these emotions, it's very cool. And actually, that's what these ceremonies are for. Not really for anything else. Because cases are shown there in a shortened form. And sometimes, if you don't know the entire work, you might not even understand, actually, what the idea is. For example, you might not catch it here, and then you might be a little confused, as they say. On the other hand, they only showed the gold works, well, and the Grand Prix too, of course. Yes, consequently, a large number of cases simply stay behind the scenes. After Cannes, it's essential to watch all these cases and analyze them.
And this, on one hand, is work, but on the other hand, it is a very pleasant and interesting story.